my biggest takeaway from this is why in God's name is Missouri in the top 25?
Yep.
And then two, the committee's telling you right now they are positioning SEC teams to be able to jump into the top 12 by putting A&M 14, LSU 15, and even Ole Miss at number 16. We'll dive more into some of these things, but maybe what's your initial takeaways when you look at this and when you kind of saw the poll come out?
I mean, you look at this top 25 and you can say some of these are not like the others. I mean, look at Washington State sitting at 21. I mean, nobody has talked about the Cougars. But as Mike Leach said, the Coug will find a way, and they have found a way this year. They are fighting for relevance. Army there at 25. Everybody knows how good Army is. If you don't,
Mhm.
you're a rock dweller for sure. I mean, but I think you hit the nail on the head. They are positioning. It's I've been known about my affinity for the SEC, but I don't understand what the committee's doing here with the SEC. I mean, it's like you said, they're just setting it up,
Yeah.
and it's not just A&M, LSU, and Ole Miss, because I think they're all really good teams and really strong contenders. But the way they've set them up here is trying to set up for drama. And honestly, I think Georgia's too high at number 3. I mean, they have outside of one game, they've really looked bad. I
Pedestrian.
mean, yeah, pedestrian. It is the nice way of saying it. I think Miami's look better. You can say what you want about Miami's games. They're at least fun to watch. I mean, they
Yeah.
can win in shootouts. They've proved that. But I mean, it's interesting. I think Penn State is in a weird spot right there at 6. But it's different. I'm still adjusting to it's a 12-team playoff, so they're really in there comfortably. But I mean, the first rankings by the committee is always wild, and this one is no different.
I saw some tweets last night saying, well, this doesn't really matter. And I disagree. I think it sets a precedent. It sets a baseline for what we're going to go off of. And you get an early idea, Will, of how this committee views certain things about teams. And another thing I wanted to point out to you, BYU at 9. Okay. Now this is what we've all said. And I'll bring in the bracket here in a second. But just looking at these rankings, to me, what this has shown is that we're seeing BYU being valued as, hey, they're good, but I think that the committee's keeping an eye out on and opening the door, I should say, for Boise State to jump them. Should a Big 12 team come in with 2 losses, as a Big 12 title champion, which isn't far-fetched, if that happens, Will, I think the door's open with just Boise State at 12, BYU at 9. You can make a case that they're opening the door, or it's cracked there for Boise State to be the 4th, auto bid and that auto buy.
Did we determine that? I thought it was the 4 highest ranked power conference champions.
No, Boise State can be the 4th seed. It's the
okay.
It's not it's the they can be the 4 seed. They just can't the ruling is weird, but no, they can be the 4 seed.
It's a strange rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Notre Dame too. I mean, Notre Dame being at 10, you see who's around them. That's a weird spot too. I just don't see them putting a Boise State or that G5 champion in the top 4.
It's gonna be hard.
It's gonna be very hard. I mean, they're gonna have to win all their games by like 40 for that to happen, and get some help too.
They're gonna have to get some help. I think the case could be made if you have a 2-loss Big 12 champ. And, the Boise State signature win is going to be interesting to kind of watch how that develops as well. I'm going to get to a couple comments here because it's very good. Matt says that Indiana should at least be 6 or 7. TriStar follows that with that Indiana should be number 2. Will, do you feel like Indiana's valued correctly in this poll? Look, they're undefeated. They're beating the crap out of teams. Like you can't luck into what they're doing. They're doing it dominantly. I understand they don't have a big marquee win. They're going to have an opportunity for that later on in the season. But Indiana at 8, do you hate that? Do you love it? What do you think?
I think Indiana's properly rated. I think, like you said, you don't luck into being undefeated. You can't control how good other teams are, and they're taking care of business, but you got to factor in strength of schedule, and especially with the 3 Big Ten teams that are ahead of them, they've all played much harder schedules. Ohio State's played both Oregon and Penn State. So I have no problem with Indiana being at 8.
I don't really either, necessarily. I mean, I think it's okay. Dev does bring up that Notre Dame at 10, he says, is a little bit crazy. Dev, I'm curious, is it crazy bad, crazy good? Will, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame? Because I think Notre Dame's a good football team.
I think Notre Dame's a very good football team, and seeing
Yeah,
them in person, they're legit. They're
yeah,
legit. I think they're definitely a playoff contender. I think that they've done. I mean, obviously, with them being at 10, the committee feels the same way. That I think they've done enough to make up for that loss to Northern Illinois, although it's looking worse and worse by the week.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, they've done what they're supposed to do against everybody else. So they're certainly a contender. And they're good. They're good. Don't let them being independent fool you. They're good.
Well, and that win, I think it's gonna be interesting how we value wins on opening weekend. When things just change so much. But that win at A&M is looking more impressive. I know A&M
Yep, that
lost,
too.
obviously, but that's looking. I think it's safe to say that the win at Texas A&M is looking more impressive than maybe people thought it would look. After that week 1 win, we didn't really know what we needed to know about the Aggies, but they're a good football team. But I mean, I think if you're Notre Dame, you're sitting there with a bad loss, but you've also got a win over number 14, which is propelling you. And the brand value of Notre Dame, the Golden Dome, I think helps them there
Yep,
too, getting that 10
certainly.
spot. Truthfully, I wouldn't have a problem with Notre Dame being anywhere from 10 to 13. Like you said, I think they're a playoff contender. Right now, they've got them there at number 10. TriStar says that Notre Dame is undefeated versus the Southwest Conference this year.
I I want to draw your attention, everybody else's attention to number 20 right there.
Okay.
Colorado's sitting at number 20. We talk about setting teams up to be in the playoff. I think they're setting up Colorado to sneak in if they don't win the Big 12 title game. And maybe even if they don't go to the Big 12 title game, but they win out and they somehow miss out. I think on tiebreakers, can't they miss out? Even if
They've
they win
lost to
out,
Kansas State.
right?
They still have to play. Do they play Iowa State? I'll look up their schedule while we're talking about this.
I can't remember, but I think, and you can say the same thing about Iowa State and Kansas State. They're setting them up to possibly be a second Big 12 team. Now, if one of those three teams goes on and wins the Big 12, you're getting one Big 12 team in. That's also what this first ranking tells me. But the opportunity's there. Like if one of those three wins out and misses out due to tiebreakers on the Big 12 title game, they could sneak in at number 11, depending on what happens in front of them.
Now, Dev does bring up the point. He says Colorado has literally no big wins. You look at their wins on the season, they've got, they have beaten, I should say, Cincinnati at home. They did beat Arizona on the road, which Arizona's been disappointing. They lost to Kansas State at home by 3 points. They beat UCF in Orlando. I would say that's an impressive win in terms of going on the road and just dominating somebody. I understand that the quality of the opponent's not what we thought UCF was going to be. They beat Baylor in overtime. They beat Colorado State. They did lose to Nebraska, which is not a great loss anymore. Nebraska's imploded. Interesting stuff out there. So yeah, I mean, it's a team that still has to play, and we'll talk about this game a little bit. Texas Tech this weekend, which is
Yep.
very much a game that people want to keep an eye on. Utah, okay, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. So I don't know, Will. I mean, I think Colorado's at least positioned if they go 10-2, they're positioned to be on the bubble, to have their resume looked at. Now, is it going to be better than a 10-2 SEC team or a 10-2 Big Ten team? I don't know. That'll be something kind of interesting to kind of look at. So, wanted to go. This Matt says, imagine seeing a list with Indiana and Army on it back in early August. Can you bet on that? I think that can you bet on initial playoff rankings?
I don't think so.
That'd be intriguing. Intriguing. Dev says BYU's only signature win is Kansas State, but by the same logic, what is Indiana's signature win? BYU also beat SMU, so that's
Yep.
that's their big signature win that they're hanging on. Penn State's only good win is number 19 Illinois. Yeah, Penn State's going to make the playoff though. They are. They really are. Gavin says it's a setup to win for Travis to win the Heisman Trophy. That also could be propped up. Good teams. You got to be on a good team to get there. But let's take a look at this. You see the rankings. Let's take a look though now at the playoff bracket. So here's what the playoff bracket looks like. You have obviously, and I think all four of us had this: Oregon, Georgia, Miami, BYU. I think we kind of stated that you could make a case that Miami at this juncture could be number two, although I think Georgia is being propped up by that road win at Texas, just in how they value Texas, because they got Texas in the number 5 spot, or in the number 6 spot in this. Ohio State 5. Then you keep looking there. I think I had the Indiana Tennessee matchup there as well. Texas, Alabama, Penn State, Notre Dame. Your thoughts on this, Will? I mean, this 12-team playoff. I mean, we know we talked about the rankings already. What's your favorite matchup if the season ended today in that first round?
I don't I don't know if people are going to agree, but I'm going to say Penn State Notre Dame.
No, yeah.
Of all those matchups, Indiana and Tennessee would probably be the next one, but that game feels like it could be a snooze fest. I think Penn State and Notre Dame would be a lot of fun to watch. I think they're teams that are kind of opposite. I think it'd be Notre Dame's offense against Penn State's defense. I think that'd be a fun matchup.
Physical game. Very, very physical game. Clayton says, don't let your kids watch that type of game. That could be not safe for work. So physical. Texas, Alabama is going to draw eyes just because of what happened last year when these two teams faced off. And look, Alabama fans would travel well to Austin. I think the big snoozer, and I think it's just going to be because of the casual take, is probably going to be Ohio State, Boise State. You would assume that Ohio State could win that game pretty big. You would assume, I say. But the Indiana Tennessee game, we're talking on Monday, and someone commented that sounds like a really bad season opener. And Will, I think you said that's the Duke's Mayo kickoff, and then I said that's the Bristol game.
Yep.
Indiana, Tennessee, though, what about a home play? If you'd have told Indiana fans a year after being one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country, they're going to host a playoff game 4 days before Christmas against Tennessee, what's the likelihood of that? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, nobody could have predicted this.
No, it's ridiculous. Dev says that Indiana, Tennessee has some real sickos potential. That's definitely for sure. So that's the 12-team playoff. And we'll kind of talk about it in the two games we're going to preview and then some of the games to watch tonight. We mentioned kind of going back to, Alabama sitting there at 11. If LSU beats Alabama this week, Alabama's out. The 3-loss regular season, they're not, in my opinion, getting in. You could see LSU fill that void. Could you see A&M slide up in there? Does SMU have enough strength? I think that's what's going to be interesting to watch, Will, is if LSU beats Alabama, you're really going to know how much they value the SEC if they allow a 2-loss SEC team to just fully jump SMU.
Well, I mean, SMU controls their own destiny.
Oh, very true. SMU wins out, then it's not a big deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think their best bet at help would be Indiana losing, Notre Dame losing. Other than that, I don't know where they would necessarily need help. But again, like you said, we got to see what happens in the SEC down the stretch. I mean, and LSU win on Saturday. I mean, then LSU controls their own destiny into the playoff to be that 10 or 11 seed. So there's still so much to play for.
A lot to play for. Week 11 is going to be nice.
And don't forget Texas A&M.
Yeah, that game's going to be
absolutely
crazy.
Shaping up to possibly be the biggest game of the season.
That game is going to be nuts in College Station. Going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. No, I do agree with you. SMU holds their own destiny. The problem is, and the question we're going to have to ask is, we assume now that the ACC champion, the ACC runner-up will have 2 losses. That at least, because Pitt, I don't know if Pitt's still alive in the race. Clemson already has 2 losses.
Unless it's Miami.
That might be the ACC's best bet to get 2 teams in, honestly. You'd have to have SMU win the ACC title, and then you would have to have Miami be a 1-loss, a 12-1 team. Miami's getting in at 12-1, in my opinion. especially with
Yeah, if
probably
their only
rising year.
loss is the ACC title game.
Yeah.